So there are a few questions that we would like to pose to the panelists today. Just to give you an idea, we want to understand if banks in India are doing enough to provide end-to-end digital solutions across the value chain. What, in the opinion of the panel, are some of the challenges that they are seeing in greater adoption of digital solutions for transaction banking? What role can banks play and should play in driving adoption? What role can technology play? And we have representatives of the technology industry on the panel, and we'll get their perspectives on that. And finally, the question which everybody is keen on understanding today, what's the role that non-banks are playing? Is fintech a competition to bank, or is it a useful ally? And we'll try and get the panel's view on that. Before we get started, I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce the eminent panel who we have with us today, and then we'll get on with the questions. We have with us Mr. M.K. Jain. He is Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Indian Bank. Mr. Jain is a seasoned banker with more than 3 decades of banking experience. He started his banking career at Punjab National Bank and has then subsequently spent a long stint at Syndicate Bank. He joined Indian Bank as Executive Director in September 2013 and eventually took over as MD and CEO in November last year. Over the last 3 years at Indian Bank, he's been instrumental in driving large-scale reforms across HR, BPR, technology and innovation at Indian Bank. We have Ms. Debapama Sen, Head of Treasury and Trade Solutions for Citibank India. Debapama has completed 2 decades at Citi, wherein she's worked across different areas of Citi's institutional clients group, including various roles in trade finance ops and cash management. In June 2013, she took over as business head, Treasury and Trade Solutions for Citi India, leading a team helping Citi's local and global clients with their cash management and trade finance needs. She's on the board of NPCI and the FICCI Capital Markets Committee. We have Mr. Rajiv Ahuja, Head of Strategy for RBL Bank. Rajiv brings over 25 years of experience in banking and financial services. He's been an integral part of RBL Bank's transformation journey and is responsible for building the overall strategy of the bank while managing retail banking, transaction banking, and financial inclusion businesses for the bank. Prior to joining RBL Bank, Rajiv was a managing director with Citi India and director in the capital market and investments division of Deutsche Bank in Singapore and Hong Kong. We have with us Mr. Asit Oberoi. Asit he's group president and global head transaction banking group for Yes Bank. He heads the product and sales stream across all transaction banking products for Yes Bank, and in this role engages extensively with corporate clients across all business segments pan-India. He's also the chief sponsor for all digitization efforts in the B2B and B2B2C segments at Yes Bank, including creating cross-sell across the value chain. Prior to joining Yes Bank, he has over 20 years experience spanning across Fidelity, Standard Chartered, ANZ Grindlays, and Bank of America. We also have Mr. Abhay Gupte, CEO of Manipal Technologies. Abhay comes with 30 years of experience in banking, FS, and IT. Prior to joining Manipal Technologies as CEO, he was MD and partner at Logica and MD of EDS India. Abhay has spent more than 12 years in banking and financial services with Amex and GE Capital. And finally, we have Mr. Kiran Shetty, CEO of Swift India on the panel. Kiran has more than 20 years experience in the financial services industry with top Fortune 500 US companies. He's currently chief executive of Swift India, a joint venture with top Indian public and private sector banks. He manages a product portfolio that caters to critical domestic market infrastructures and market segments across payments, trade, corporate, and securities. Prior to Swift, Kiran was Managing Director and Regional Vice President for Western Union. So that's the panel. Please welcome them, give them a big hand. And we look forward to an engaging discussion with the panel today on the topic of transaction banking. So let's get started with the panel. Mr. Jain, maybe first question, I'll get started with you. Our survey shows that corporate customers are complaining that their banks are not really offering them cutting-edge technology solutions. But in your view, are corporates really ready to embrace technology for, at least for doing their day-to-day banking transactions?
if you see, actually, if we see the changes happening in the globe, the most of the corporates are becoming now global because the business has become global. So whether lot many corporates have become MNCs, they are having various business partners in the overseas countries. So definitely they have to embrace the technology. There is no other way out. Now the second issue is that banking is becoming day by day very complex. A lot of derivatives, a lot of new initiatives, a lot of new things are coming. And with that complexity, the time requirement to delivery has shortened with a greater pace. So only technology can provide these services. Now, preparedness of the corporate clients with regard to embracing the technology and adoption of the technology, there are two parts about it. One is the transaction banking, which basically is the day-to-day transaction with regard to their account. And second is the non-transaction banking. Now, as far as transaction banking is concerned, most of the corporate clients are very well positioned. They are demanding a lot of technology product. They are asking end-to-end solution, and they are ready for end-to-end solution in their entire supply chain management. And that is where the transaction banking, now banks have to offer, there is no other way out, and banks are offering to that. The challenge comes from the non-banking transaction, that is mainly the credit approvals and other part. In that credit approval and other part, you need to have complete back office, which corporates are required to build up. You need to have the adaptability, that the entire organization in the corporate client should have exception approval process. They need to accept digital signature. So that's a work in progress. Now the corporate clients, when they are looking forward for any technology in addition to end-to-end solution, they also look forward for cost reduction. If these two things are not offered, then they are not basically willing to come to the banks. Now the competition, increased competition among the banks is not for the growth competition. The competition is for the wallet share. And in the wallet share competition, you have to offer the value addition services. I will give two examples what Indian Bank has offered to two corporate clients. One corporate client was having cash management services with some bank for quite 15-20 years. Now the problem that they were facing, the reconciliation was a big problem for them. And they are spending a lot of money on their back office, and reconciliation was becoming a hell of the job for them. We offered a technology product, and we made reconciliation seamless. We provided MIS at a definite frequency on a push mode, and enabling the flexibility in a pull mode also whenever they need it. And now they are banking with us. One government client, a big government client, we were not the preferred partner or the preferred banker with that government department. Now that government department was having close to around 51,000 dealers across the state. And their process was, they were going to procure and taking the orders by their marketing team. Then that order they used to send to the headquarters. Thereafter, the client account to be debited and credited to the department's account, and after getting the confirmation, delivery order was issued. This entire process was taking around 2 days. We provided our solution by connecting their server with our server in 1 minute. And we were able to open around 51,000 virtual accounts of all the dealers. And that is how basically the corporate clients are looking forward as far as technology is concerned.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think these are quite interesting examples, but my next question, Devamma, to you. Do you think these are one-off examples, or do you think banks in India are actually doing enough to offer digital and technology to their clients, specifically for transactions?
I don't think it's a one-off example at all. As Jain Saab very accurately said, that it's a wallet share game now. So it has to be about value addition, and it's no longer about, you know, everyone's growing, so no matter what you do, you will grow. Those days are all gone, right? So to your point, Pratik, I think absolutely it is far more widespread than we think it is. Two or three things are happening in the Indian context, in addition to the fact that Indian corporates are going overseas. Another very interesting concept, thing that's happening here is that the world of e-commerce has actually changed individuals' views around what sort of experience they should get, what electronic really means, what digital means, and what anytime, anywhere really means. So while a lot of the technology was always available, banks were already always providing platforms, but I think now there is a very different expectation. So if you're an individual who can, at any point in the day or night, want to go and buy something online, pay online instantaneously using your smartphone, and also get instant fulfillment if you're buying content versus a product, you are far more amenable to using that when you come into office in the morning, and B, you are also demanding that similar experience. So I think the biggest shift that banks have made, probably some faster than others, has been that gone are the days when you make self-service and electronic banking tools enterprise in. You know, when you look at your back office and then make something which you think the customer might buy. We are now, increasingly, all banks are looking at it customer in. So start with the client, what is the experience he's demanding, and then do that inward. You know, I'll add just one example before I hand it back to you, Pratik, is that we had, a particular client who was operating in 70-odd countries from India. And one of their biggest concerns was how do I, on a continuous basis, open accounts? And they were making a lot of inorganic acquisitions. And their biggest concern was how do I continuously have a process of opening accounts? Transactions and sending payments is one thing, we've been doing it electronically forever. But it was interesting to see how quickly they were able to adopt our solution of opening accounts online, completely without any paper, except for what is regulatorily required. And I think that was an immediate transformation we saw.
Sure. Just a follow-up question on that. Maybe I think all of us have talked about the Uberification of the world, and we talk about retail customers being more amenable to using technology now. Are you seeing the same trend with corporates as well? We talk about we talk about technology in the context of payments for retail quite well, but in corporates also, are you seeing transactions moving to digital platforms really?
Absolutely, and that is, sort of what I was getting at, that customers, the same, at the end of the day, who is our buying center? Our buying center is the corporate treasurer or the CFO. And he or she is now very used and very comfortable with the digital experience on the personal front. So they're completely demanding that when they come into work. And I think banks are catching up. I'll give you an example. Citi's electronic banking mobile app recently won an award in the Global Mobile World Conference in Barcelona in 2015. It was the only banking app. So the others were all technology companies and FMCG companies and telecom companies. But I think that's changing very rapidly. I think a lot of banks have more than come across. But that demand is definitely there. The other point I will make is that in the time that I've seen in banking, innovation usually started in the consumer space, and it would take 3 or 4 years before it came to the B2B space or the C2B space. I think that time is now a matter of months. And I'm sure UPI will be the next example where it may have been originally set up for a P2P payment, but it'll be a matter of time before everyone's using it for B2B as well. Yeah,
no, absolutely fair. Rajiv, I wanted to ask you, you've been driving the use of technology for transaction banking at RBL Bank. So what does it really take to build end-to-end technology-enabled solutions? What are some success factors in your experience?
Thanks. I think the tack we adopted, and we're a younger bank than a lot of others sitting here, and perhaps not having the legacy advantages of customers who've been entrenched. I think we took a call, and pretty much what Debo said, that the client of tomorrow is also getting impacted by digital services providers. So, I mean, in some senses, every customer we talked to in the last 6-12 months is thinking about how Amazon, how Uber are going to impact their own life. So some digital remastering of industry at the industry level and the corporate level is happening. And if people are alive to that, I think the conversation becomes very interesting. So 18 months ago, we decided to actually go on what we call an open banking platform, which is really leveraging the power of API. APIs actually is a very interesting, it's been used for donkey's years, but it's always been internal to banks. It's more an arcane technology discussion than a business discussion. But actually, API banking or open banking is a very, very leverageable platform which can allow, very quick, easy, flexible access and innovation to be done not just within the bank, but outside. So about 18 months ago, we went public with our API platform. So we have a lot of developers who are using our ready APIs to innovate on the top. So for somebody like us, actually, we lead with API. We are very conscious that most of our clients, and the SME is actually even more interesting. Most of our large clients are seized of the challenges of working in an extended enterprise where competition is also non-traditional. So a typical 20-year ago TBG solution was, I have 50 suppliers, 20 distributors, how do you electronify or build me an MIS around it? In fact, frankly, that's become base case now. I have 50 suppliers, 20 distributors, but I have 1 million customers. How do I engage with them? Because that's the engagement which Amazon is demanding. Yeah? So it's no longer closed user group, 6 months host-to-host integration, and you send in engineers to do the stitching all over again. It's how do I reach those 1 million customers of mine whom I've had no connection with, and actually I want to know what they're doing. So for us, extended enterprise, B2B to C, many, scale is very, very different, value of transactions is very different, and the speed of implementation is no longer about an RFP and a whole technology discussion. Can you get me on an API platform as app? And I think that's where we decided to invest internally. Partly, thankfully, we built our technology platform in 12, 13, 14. So we didn't have to do a lot of, the messy wiring which people are engaged with who've got 20, 30-year-old technology platforms. So we've used an ESB, a middleware to really power the application side of transaction banking. So payments, collections, MIS, account opening, everything in the RBL bank is being in some manner APIized. And the idea is we leverage the power of API to sometimes customize, but often actually ensure that those are available on tap and build around them. Yep, thank you.
Sure, thanks. And that's a very interesting perspective to see how quickly things are changing. But Asit, on this point, I wanted to get your perspectives. Yes Bank has been quite active in this space now for quite some time. How have you seen the transaction banking space evolve over the last several years, both from a customer needs perspective as well as the bank's offerings perspective?
Yeah. So I think the response over the last 10 years has been, seen a lot of electronification across the globe. Earlier, you would have each bank having multiple peripheral systems to meet different needs. So that is gradually changing over time because each system, as it builds up and they're meeting different needs, it becomes harder to manage, harder to sustain scale through that. So the electronification has really gone up. I mean, you've seen NPCI playing a stellar role, so the amount of NEFTs and RTGSs are going up, NACH has come in, IMPS has come in. So there is shared services have come in. So a lot of the large corporates now have shared services in play. So what that does is, from a customer expectations perspective, it helps, have standardization. So you don't necessarily have different, they deal with multiple banks, so they'll rather have, standard procedures and protocols. And information security is another thing corporates are very concerned about. They're, I would say, at the extent of saying they're paranoid, and rightfully so, in terms of security of their credentials and access to their bank accounts. Also, corporates are also looking for predictability around outcomes. So, can it be a standardized way of doing something? Banks' offerings now have moved in line with the customer requirements of standardization, InfoSec, predictability. So they have been evolving, and we also have pushed API banking in a big way across all our clients over the last 18 months or so. For example, with a large e-com company, there was a big challenge they had on refund payments. So it was taking multiple days for the refund to happen. So using API as a concept, opening it up, and building a solution in a couple of weeks almost, because their open APIs are available. So we actually, as the goods get picked up from, say, my house, and it's inspected, it triggers an API call, and it gets instantly paid into that guy's account. More important, also a reverse transaction feed comes in, so the recon is almost instantaneous. It's an instantaneous recon. So it leads to productivity benefit, because you can, in festival times, there are hundreds of thousands of transactions that happen. So it helps from a customer service perspective, it helps from a productivity perspective, as well as risk management perspective. When you do one API, then you can do multiple. You can, pay out from wallets using API calls, and in not only that, on, say, online travel space, you can actually transfer money from a sub-agent to an agent, and as the money comes in, it gets reconciled and tickets get issued automatically. Similarly, in electronic collections, using API calls again, money comes in, and if it's an electricity supply authority, if money comes in, they can almost do an API call using web services to validate the amount. If it's within a date, it's this much amount, etc. So you can actually validate all that, and if it's after due date, you have to expect a different amount. You can reject the transaction. So it helps banks significantly, and corporates significantly move ahead. And there are more developments. API is today, tomorrow it's blockchain and other things, which is very exciting in the world of supply chain. It's going to enable everything being available to all the parties of the channel finance transaction. There's a trust factor, there is a virtual contract, and you can actually validate the flow. So there is a lot happening. So in multiple I'll summarize by saying that from a transaction banking perspective, all transaction banking experts within the room and in the world, integrated solutions, to my mind, is the holy grail that everyone is aspiring for. So it's a question of who gets it, and obviously we also have the benefit of not a lot of legacy. So we're a relatively young bank. We still consider ourselves a startup. So there's a lot of ongoing development happening.
I think startup is the new buzzword these days. Everyone wants to be a startup. But thanks for that, Asit. So the bankers on the panel are convinced, customers are ready, banks are ready. Now let's try and get a sense of how ready technology is. And I'll ask the technology experts on the panel, starting with you, Abhay, on what role can technology really play in enabling the digitization of transactions, specifically for the transaction banking products?
Thank you, Pratik. Now, if you look at banking, essentially the adoption of technology is driven by four foundational components: the convenience, speed, security, and of course savings, cost saving. Now, these are given and foundational. But at the same time, the newer areas which are also impacting the deployment, for example, the quality of deployment, with social media, the buzz and the opinions do matter, and those quality of deployments can make or break technology adoption very, very quickly with regards to what is being newly introduced. And with a much larger next generation coming into the banking area, these things matter. As I look at it, there are three important aspects in adoption of technology. One is how is the technology provider bringing in newer technologies, able to introduce newer areas of business, identify the risk, discuss the risk, and have a mitigation plan. But at the same time, I think the important part is that his and her ability to maintain and keep up to date with the newer threats, newer areas of business. You spoke about startups. Now, if you look at startups, every startup is working on one part of the business, one part of banking area, and threatening the so-called the legacy player. But at the same time, when you look at banks, what we have been experiencing is that you really need to adopt newer technologies and change. We have had, at the cost of reducing our revenue, replace the technology or re-engineer the services to the client. But then, as a 75-year-old supplier, we need to do that, and we need to bring those technologies to fore. What we are also seeing from CIOs is the longevity of the service provider. There have been cases where the service provider has disappeared, and that has put the bank or the corporate at a risk, which is very, very important, especially in the area of transaction banking, where large volume security and instantaneousness is crucial. Second part, and which is becoming very common now, is that ability of the provider to co-create or bring together multiple service partners, multiple providers, and create an ecosystem which is healthy, supportive of the bank. No longer are the days of a large system doing multiple things for the bank are there. Those are over with now. And there are multiple, in the disruption that is occurring with startups, banks are also keen to take multiple products and do that. But if you have restrictive technologies, that becomes a problem for the bank, and collating them together, putting them together is important. In fact, we've recently seen one of the large banks replacing an expensive product because it was not open and it could not collaborate or work with other technology. So at the cost of significant amount, banks are now, CIOs are taking those calls to work towards an open system, and that's what is important from technology provider. And the third and last point I would add is that how the technology provider is able to help bank adopt those new technology through learning systems, through adoption to FAQs, through ability to service them. Now, service supplies and FAQs are very, very crucial because they become at one point integral or a critical part in bank's ability to service clients. So in effect, three important points: innovative partner, ability to co-create an ecosystem, and help bank deploy, I would say are very, very important.
Sure, thank you, Abhay. Kiran, I wanted to ask you, you've been in the business of enabling digitization of transactions for a long, long time. What are some of the new technologies which are coming up which can solve existing pain points or create drivers for adoption of technology for these transactions going forward?
Sure. So Pratik, from my perspective, when you look at the ecosystem, one of the biggest things that's changing or pushing digitization is the mobile penetration, internet penetration across the globe. And that is only going to accelerate. With that backbone, you see acceleration in digitization across, and more so in developing economies. So I can talk about Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, you have a mobile wallet provider called bKash. In no time, they have registered about 20 million mobile wallet users. And the reason they have been able to be, they have been so successful is for the simple reason that they're simple. They are able, the product can be operated from a feature phone. They are very secure, and they have created a mass acceptance point of sale mechanism across. If you come closer to India, with all the evolving infrastructure that is being laid out in India, like Aadhaar, UPI now coming in, I think these pieces are going to create further acceleration in digitization in our country. And I think these are the technological developments further accelerated by many startups that are trying to provide innovative solutions to bankers, are going to drive technology innovations in the country further. That's my point of view, Pratik.
Fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. Mr. Jain, one question to you on this. Abhay and Kiran have talked about the advancements in technology. They talked about making it convenient, simple, feature phone friendly, etc. So do you think technology can actually play a role in taking this digitization of transactions to the financial inclusion agenda? Can we really take it to the masses using technology?
This financial inclusion, I will divide into three parts. One is the basic banking. Now, in the basic banking, as far as the availability is concerned, presently around 1.90 lakhs AEPS and RuPay card enabled machines are available through various BCs. But that availability is bank specific. That availability is not sector specific. So interoperability is one issue which is need to be worked, that is work in progress, and I think the technology partner also are, few partners are struggling to provide that interoperability. I think that's the one key area. Second issue is with regard to banks have opened around 24 crore of PMJDY account in the recent past. And if we see the transaction, it is around 3 crore per month transactions. So what is needed is accessibility. Now, whether it is having the access. So banks need to scale up in a large volume. Hardware scaling up is very easy. The software scaling is one bigger issue, and particularly the biometric verification and all those stuff. So one is scalability. Second is there are still large number of areas where the connectivity is a problem. So when the connectivity is a problem, you are having the availability, but you don't have the access to all those parts. So that is another area. The third area is the technology still we are providing through BC module, we are providing through micro ATMs, and the transaction cost is still very high. And these are small value, large volume transactions. So unless until the transaction cost is coming down, whether it will be profitable business in the long term, that again is a discussion in the boardrooms. Now, second part in the financial inclusion is the remittances. Presently, the financial inclusion through BC module is being used for cash deposit and cash payment. That's all. The remittances have still to pick up. And the remittances will pick up when there is an acceptability and ease of doing it. Now, presently, what we need the account number of the beneficiary, we need the IFSC code of the beneficiary, so all those things. So remittance, and still we are a cash-heavy society. Our cash to GDP ratio is around 12%, which is highest. So in a cash-heavy society, the individuals are getting a comfort by getting the cash. So still we have not reached to the level that if somebody is coming as a newspaper vendor to your house and he is accepting the remittance through the mobile app and accepting that money. So probably there we need to work out on QR kind of situations where just you scan and make the payment. And awareness among the people to create the confidence in the system as far as remittance is concerned. The third part, which is the next part, is basically the credit availability. Now in the credit availability, you should have very simple process. And with the simple application pass-through process, where the backend should be very strong. And the backend strong will be able to work out if there is a huge database available, there is a proper algorithm based on the consumer behavior, based on their lifestyle, and not based on the income and other criteria. So that's another thing, which I foresee that probably in the times to come where the banks can work very well in the financial inclusion part, I think the banking need to integrate with the e-mandis, e-trades, e-availability. Now in many parts it is being observed that the semi-skilled people in certain parts there is a scarcity of the people and they are not able to generate enough income. And in certain parts there is availability, surplus availability of those semi-skilled people. So these kind of integrations are required to be done. And then I think financial inclusion is a work in progress.
Sure, I think a very pertinent point, Mr. Jain. Just for record, we've seen that more than 78% of all consumer payments that happen in India today happen by way of cash. This number for developed countries is in the range of 20 to 40%. The long way that we need to go, and banks really need to play an important role in enabling that. Dipama, a question to you. I think Mr. Jain talked about interoperability, accessibility, low cost of transactions, and making it convenient and simple. You mentioned UPI earlier. So wanted to get your thoughts on UPI. Do you think it solves for almost all of these problems that Mr. Jain listed?
I think it solves for many. The most interesting thing about UPI, at least in the way it is proposed, is in its simplicity. And Jain Saab spoke about, having to know the beneficiary's account number, IFSC code, or even an MMID, depending on, which part of the legacy you're using. UPI is refreshing in its simplicity because all you need to do is know somebody's virtual ID. Eventually, it will come down to how the ecosystem develops around it. Eventually, it will come down to the UPI is a payment platform, it's a settlement mechanism. Eventually, it will come down to how the banks and service providers build an ecosystem of usable apps around it. And it will also come down to how the endpoint security works out, as to how the service provider or the bank that's providing the app is able to make it extremely secure and then bring that awareness to the customer. But I think that the time for that kind of technology has definitely come in India.
Okay, interesting. I think in my view, it's the creation of the virtual ID, which I think is the trickiest part of this entire leg of the transaction. Unless we are able to use systems like the UK where we can do mobile number-based transfer, that really makes it very, very seamless and convenient. But we are all hoping that UPI does well and really helps us solve this problem of making transactions digital.
One point on UPI, and you mentioned that point on cash earlier as well. So I think with UPI coming in and all banks getting on it, we will see over time that a lot of the cash on delivery on e-commerce will hopefully move to UPI because it's going to be convenient to do it.
Yeah.
Having said that, obviously India is a cash-driven economy.
Yeah.
So that's also an important kind of point.
Well, interestingly, we've done research very recently where we've asked both consumers and merchants, and at least the right answer is that people are willing to move to a digital platform, provided it's as convenient as cash, in quotes. That's what everybody talks about. Even merchants are saying they would not like to see extra queuing in their shops because they start accepting wallet payments or UPI payments. So we have to make it very, very convenient.
So one of the things we've also offered, because we realize that clients will always need cash. It's going to happen. So we offered something called Bank in a Box, which we place in a lot of client offices where you can deposit cash at any time in the day. So it's been very successful in large places which deal with cash. So we're trying to digitize cash to that extent.
Sure. Rajiv, one question to you. We've talked about this retail payment space and the maximum fintech disruption that we've seen in India in the last 12 to 18 months is in the payment space, whether it's the wallet providers or P2P payment companies, etc. What's your view on fintech and this entire financial startup? Do you think it's a competition to banks? Do you think they'll take balances away, they'll take transactions away? Or could it be a useful ally for banks?
So I have a very high view of fintech. So that's the starting position. I think in a lot of ways, fintechs are doing point-to-point solutions using public architecture and bank sponsorship. So we are perhaps, I wouldn't know we are the largest, but we are one of the most prominent backers of fintech in terms of being banking, providers to them and leveraging their domain understanding. So fintech is not just about technology. It's also about having a very acute understanding of a particular customer pain point or an opportunity which a large institution usually glosses over or averages out. And I think if you've seen some of the examples you mentioned, so take Square for instance. I mean, what is Square? I mean, it's really a sachet form of big POS devices which large banks and large data companies have been doing for decades. All they did was took it into a smaller way, and that same device can actually become a QR or really a software application as people start getting more comfortable by not using those big POS devices. So I think it's a question, fintechs are not creatures from outer space. They are using technology very, very interestingly to solve pain points where either banks have no access, don't have time, or have forgotten them. So clearly, I mentioned SME in my previous remarks. I think one of the biggest opportunities for banks is to work with SMEs and even micro SMEs. In fact, in RBL, we have a big push on working with MSMEs, notwithstanding our small size, to work with fintech companies. So some of the fintech companies who are aggregating MSMEs or the e-com platforms or the digital marketplaces, how do you leverage this fintech partnership and being able to co-create products, co-create payment opportunities, and fintechs are usually one product or one service company, and they have this extreme desire to, quote unquote, own the customer relationship. And frankly, given the regulatory environment, they need a partner who is as agile as them. And that's something we started 2 years ago. So we really believe fintech. At heart, we are a fintech bank. We only discuss our business challenges in terms of technology and domain and partnerships. So for us, fintech is the best thing coming out because those guys get it. Those guys have phenomenal insights. And, capital cycles will keep changing, but I think the business opportunity is immense. So we are all for partnership and trying to learn from them and trying to contribute to the ecosystem.
I think if I can just add, Pratik, I think Rajiv said it very well. While there's been an outward debate raging on the question you just raised, that is it competition, is it threat, will it take away the business? Quietly, I think a lot of banks have been collaborating very well with fintech, and probably that's less talked about. Just to give you a very similar example, we do something called a City Mobile Challenge. We run it in multiple countries around the world. And we ran it for the first time in Bangalore last year, and we had hundreds of applicants from India. And what we did was we just threw open, and this is now a regular feature, we threw open our APIs across multiple areas, including transaction banking. Most banks, you see it doing this in the consumer space, but we threw it open even in the institutional and transaction banking space. And just as Rajiv described, we had people come in, pick up an extreme customer pain point, and find a painkiller, not a vitamin, right? A painkiller. And they solved that problem. And now we are across the institution, we are now working with 7 or 8 of these people, and then hopefully, this will become an ongoing feature. So while the debate rages on, I think the two, fintech and banking, have found a way to make 1 + 1 makes 5.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think the governor also alluded to that yesterday in his opening speech, where he said, one is India is highly underbanked, and there's opportunities to do a lot more. And fintech, in some ways, looks at a specific technology issue or a specific technology pain point, and that is their core strength. While our core strength is banking, and we can partner with them. And at Yes Bank, we have multiple avenues for engaging with fintech. We recently tied up with T-Hub, which is an incubator, and we have with iSpirit MOU going, and multiple opportunities where we can partner from at various stages of life cycle, from investment to incubation to helping them actually market their products. Because there's having actually worked with many of these companies myself at various stages of their life cycle, some of them were 2-3 years back really small fintech companies, and today they are the largest, be it e-commerce marketplaces, and you've seen them evolve, and you played a role in partnering with them to see them evolve. So I think that, in it eliminates, there's an opportunity to create what I call a win-win situation between us and them. If we partner with them effectively, we can create win-wins, we can help them market their products better as well as take care of, pain points. And we've partnered well with them on this space.
Sure, I think that's quite a unanimous view there, that it's more of an opportunity than a threat. Asit, I'll stay with you. We've often talked about two ends of the spectrum. We talk about large corporates who are looking for industry-specific cash management solutions or host-to-host integration, et cetera. And we've talked about the retail payments, which is the wallets and the P2P solutions. Rajiv briefly talked about SMEs. I wanted to get your perspective on where are they in this entire debate and what's their readiness to embrace technology?
SMEs are at a very interesting space. I think, again, similar to corporates, you can never say one size fits all. So there are some corporates also, which are very averse to technology, they're averse to change. Sometimes they want to cut checks because it manages float better. And so similarly in the SME space also there are, various stages. In the SME space also there is a lot of, fintech that is coming up in that space. There is P2P lending happening. There are multiple developments that are happening. And I think they are at a very interesting stage where you can actually, if you look at, say, something like channel finance, for example, where you deal with a lot of SMEs within that space, be it vendors and dealers. If you create a fully integrated solution and you work through a solution whereby, you can take care of the full banking of that dealer or that supplier using an integrated solution, you can actually, create a very, very good solution. SMEs have very small finance teams. So, a lot of them use Tally, for example. So with Tally, we have a very, very good API-based solution, which helps us significantly. We found SMEs very open to that. And since the finance functions can be 1 or 2 or 3 people, if you can make life easier from them from a recon perspective and automation perspective, they find, you're really adding to their, it's almost like even the SME gradually from a 20 crore becomes 50, becomes 100, 200. It's not going to be, the number of people is not going to add up. And I always tell them in many ways, there's an opportunity to partner with us to create solutions jointly. But the SME space is growing. It's a big focus for us. We're creating branches around that as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to partner with SMEs, and I think they are very alive to it. Having said that, I think the whole, just coming to your initial comments that you had, I think the whole journey is an evolution journey, because almost integrated transaction banking is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a journey, and I think SMEs have, taken part and have taken the first few steps in that journey very well. So there's a good opportunity there.
Sure, thanks. So we've, I think the panel talks about the fact that customers seem to be ready to embrace technology. Still, when we do research, obviously our data shows that a lot of transactions still are paper-based, manual. Clients are aware of it, but they are not using it to the maximum extent possible. Abhay, wanted to get your perspectives on what are the challenges that you see, both from the client side as well as the bank side, because you work with banks very closely in providing technology to them. What do you think the banks need to do differently to further this adoption?
So if we look at the complexities of technology and its adoption with the length and breadth of the country, the societal differences and economic differences that we see across the country, the adoption has been at a very different level, as Mr. Jain said about financial inclusion or the BC network. If we look at the 3 life stages of acquire, transact, and engage, banks have changed their methodology in each one of them. Acquire, client used to walk into the bank and become a client, to now, they looking out, going out to his doorsteps to do banking, tab-based account opening or whatnot into the BC network as well. So I think if you look at just acquire as a part, the challenge has been access to the remotest part as well as access to the busy clientele that they have and their expectation of banking and need. And that challenge has been getting addressed, at least in the rural part, through the technology adoption, ease of access. We are seeing digital branches being, launched, inroads being made by banks like SBI to deploy large number of digital banks to make it a self-service banking. Now, when you come to transact, obviously the wallets, the fintechs, the online or internet banking has made difference, but has it reached the areas where it needs to, or where there is still a large amount of cash being used, as the panel said? I think the technologies like remittance are required and are making inroads very, very slowly, but they are making difference. I think those challenges of remoteness, challenges of access to technology, And of course, the associated areas around networks and electricity definitely have been challenged. And banks are working towards creating a low-cost technologies to those areas and easy to use, not just phone-based, but also on a feature phone-based. That's when it comes to transact. And we have seen in at least last 1.5 years, a significant change in taking that technology back into the rural part of the country. The third part is engage. And, there hasn't been such an impact with engage with regards to the rural part of the country as against the urban part of the country, where, social media and other areas of engagement have been very, very prevalent to deploy newer products, newer areas of business, and, take benefits out of it. But those still are lacking in the rural part, where technology to engage them is still missing, with access to ATMs or POS machines and whatnot. With telephone-based devices coming in, that would change. Today, if you look at, there is still a hardware-based technology deployment, hardware-specific technology deployment that needs to change to make it an open technology, whereby it's no longer a hardware-based machine. You need a POS. Can there be a technology without a POS? The second part is technology still in large parts is sold based on time. You sell a license for a year, you engage for a year, as against usage-based. And once that occurs, there will be a bigger impact, especially in the rural area where it is on usage-based, not just on time-based. And that challenge will easily get addressed as CIOs have started looking at usage-based purchase of technology as against time-based purchase.
Sure, that's quite useful. Kiran, sorry, Mr. Jain.
I will add one thing, that you asked about the paperless banking. As far as technology is concerned, yes, technology is available and it is enabler. But the adoption is a challenge. Now, we don't have the eKYC. So in absence of eKYC, the paperless banking will be a distant dream. We don't have the centralized data repository. Whatever publicly available information in the public domain, say for example, land record. Say for example, that driving license records. So unless until all those data are integrated and we move to the eKYC and verification of all these documents through system-based, till that time paper banking will continue.
Also, an important point to always bear in mind while designing technology is, what does the customer need? What is the experience he wants? So for example, if he's given a customer complaint online, can he see where it is? If there's an inward FX coming in, can he deploy funds immediately? Can he make an outward remittance against it? The client, very often we design technology, so there is technology, you give something to the technology company, you get them to design that. But if there is no input of what the client needs, then that experience is never going to be good. I think it's critical to have enough what clients need into what designs we create.
And that's quite consistent with what we've heard the clients say, that, don't sell us products, understand our problems and solve for them. I think that's what we are consistently hearing. Kiran, your perspectives on the technology front, and are banks doing enough to really drive adoption of transactions on digital?
So before I come to the point of banks doing enough for driving digitization, I just want to bring one more point in forefront regarding SMEs. I think one of the things that currently challenges SMEs in using technology is also the infrastructure in the country. We definitely have bandwidth challenges, and I think that is evolving. As and when that evolves, I think all these pieces adding together will definitely accelerate adoption at SME levels as well. Now, are banks doing enough in terms of technology adoption? I think Jensa spoke initially, Debo spoke about it initially as well. It's a game of wallet share, and there is enough pressure in the system today between all players, operators, and startup ecosystem that there is no choice. And if you look back in a decade, name one bank that doesn't have a digital solution today. SBI is the largest already. I mean, one wouldn't have thought about that about a decade back. So I think those pieces are coming together. Banks have the will. The startups or fintechs, as Rajiv put them, are coming with newer newer solutions. To my mind and to my opinion, it is a universe of partnerships and creating newer ecosystems that will further accelerate it. I think as a country and as a banking fraternity here in India, we are going in the right direction, is what I'd say.
Devapama, I wanted to get your thoughts. I think Citi has been at the forefront of digital transaction banking, trade, cash for decades now. What's your learning from what you've seen happen around the world, which you think might be relevant in India and over the next couple of years drives greater adoption of digital in the Indian context?
A lot has already been spoken about in terms of new technologies, what are the trends. I'll probably pick up a couple of things to touch upon. One is, I think, just, Asit said that treasurers and corporates are increasingly paranoid and concerned about cybersecurity. I think what will be important for us as the banking and technology community is to help our clients understand what it means for them, right? One is, a lot is talked about, there are $400 billion in 2015 that was lost to cybercrime, etc. But what does it really mean for the customer? What does it mean for endpoint security in his or her office? How do they secure their environments? Cybersecurity goes beyond technology into people and processes. And I think, so one contribution that I think this community can definitely make in terms of getting our clients ready, and that will give them far more confidence. That's a big factor in SME adoption as well. For a small, company to have that confidence, you have to let them know that, you have to help them make their environment secure. I think that's one key aspect. And we are seeing banks around the world doing this increasingly. It is the hottest topic of debate at any global client conference that we have. In a recent survey, we found that it was the top priority for treasurers, and it's a matter of time before that awareness comes here as well. The second aspect I would mention is that a lot of countries have done a very good job of digitizing their trade, cross-border trade ecosystem, and domestic trade as well. And I think that's a very important factor for India. Your slide talked about the adoption being much higher in payments, but when you came to trade bills and LCBG, it was in the range of 21%, right? And that's not surprising. I think many countries, even in Asia, like Korea, like Singapore, Hong Kong, have done a lot of work on the ecosystem, starting with single window platforms at customs, which are completely digital, clearances are digital, and therefore the flow of documentation to the bank and then the remittance, customs duty payments, etc., wherever there are duties, is completely seamless and digital. I think we have a long way to go here, but great strides have already been made by CBEC and the government this year. They launched the single window platform, and I think that will be another area of hectic activity in digitizing banking. We talk often about payments, but this is a big pain point for customers, and we'll see that changing in the next year or so.
Sure, no, I think that's quite relevant. Rajiv and Asit, question to you. We've talked about the fact that banks are doing whatever is required to make transactions go digital. Customers are ready. But what do you see as any barriers or challenges which you would want to do away with?
So I think the barriers at two levels. One is your internal barrier in the bank, because we are still, a lot of organizational inertia is there. To see things in a retrospective lens, and frankly, if you just project 3-4 years from now, the move towards, some sort of a digital is pretty much already in the works. So that's one, but that's more internal. I think the second one, and I want to draw on what Debo said and Asit said, sometimes, we are we're trying to find a problem to fit a solution. So we try to oversell, over-engineer, and try to kind of do things which, frankly, satisfies our internal objectives, versus recognizing that things exist for a reason. And this entire debate about cash versus non-cash is being framed in a very different perspective, because it's almost saying like cash is bad. But actually cash is extremely good and secure, because we have not had access to financial services in a modern manner for years. So how do you build transitory solutions to actually capture the social and commercial, relationships which are already on the ground, rather than trying to, fit what you have, what you think is interesting. And the market evolves. So the consumer small payment market, by way of wallets, has evolved in the urban areas. In the rural areas, the pace of evolution is very different. I mean, it's interesting to note that, this is a statistic I picked up from one of the recent presentations which Mr. Nilekani made, that 90% of all mobile prepaid top-ups still happen physical to digital minutes. Why is it that with 3, 4, 5 years of wallets and, there's a reason for that. So I think we have to find out solutions, especially for mid-size, small-size, and really small companies and businesses, which actually encourage them to use this rather than trying to say this is the full stack and this is the only thing which we'll sell. So that's so two challenges, one internal and really one trying to fit a solution to a problem the other way around.
I think to change the mindset of the customer as well, to move from almost a legacy system into an integrated system, there's a lot of change management involved. It isn't also at times the CFO's number one priority. He doesn't, his priority is treasury, he's got his own priorities, his own KPIs. So sometimes it's not his number one priority. Also, the whole change management around it is quite intense. So there is, so he will try and defer that decision. I think the training and change in mindset of our internal staff in the bank as well. Sometimes they prefer an internal solution like check and cash because it seems easier to sell. So there's a mindset change of internal people. Also, another challenge is data consistency. As you migrate from multiple legacy systems into one integrated system, as you switch off different ones, data consistency becomes important. And I agree with what Debo said a few minutes back on cross-border trade transactions. You still need to have bill of entries and original. I know the RBI, there is a lot of work happening, but some of them, that is also a challenge. So that's why trade is going a little slower.
No, we hope that collectively we'll all work towards resolving these barriers and driving the adoption further. My final question.
And blockchain will play a big role in some of that because there is a lot of trust factor built. It's early stages.
Yeah, but it's those kind of technologies which will really further the agenda. Final question, and I'll pose it to Mr. Jain, and other panelists can chip in if you have a wish list. But sir, is the regulator doing enough to enable digitization of transactions in the country? What's your ask from the regulator or the government?
As far as answer to this question is yes. Regulator has done a lot of things as far as digital banking is concerned. We have seen that IDRBT is the creation of RBI only, NPCI is the creation of RBI only, and now P2P is also coming, and all those UPI and Bharat Bill payment. So regulator is doing very well. Now as far as the wish list as a banker is concerned, I think what is required is the innovation. And innovation should be sported. Should be sported in terms of expertise, should be supported in terms of finance, and should be supported in terms of subsidized aspects. If we look into it, that cash management operating cost in India is around $3.5 billion. So if there is less cash circulation, obviously there will be a huge saving to the regulator as well and the banks. So it makes a fit case to provide various incentivization scheme to the consumers, to the customers, for the uses of the plastic as well as for the uses of mobile phone, by way of maybe tax incentive, by way of reducing the merchant banking. And now today paper talks about it, the government has also taken a call that the merchant establishment cost will be now borne by the government departments and not by the consumer. So that's a welcome feature. I think incentivization has to be done.
Yes, so Pratik, I would add to Mr. Jain's point. Yes, regulators are doing a lot towards digitization. But I think what would help is a roadmap for over 1 year, next 2 years, towards that activity such that the large ecosystem, the banks, the suppliers, the vendors, supplies in the country would be ready and would be able to adopt these changes much, much quicker than the speed that we see today. So a roadmap will definitely help, and especially involving those key contributors or key players who could make that acceleration faster.
So, Pratik, one point that I'll also want to add is that as we accelerate digitization in the Indian banking environment or economy, I believe that there is a need for increased awareness of cyber crime, cyber security. Sure. There is a role that RBI can play in accelerating that knowledge and putting some controls and checks and balances within the ecosystem. So that's something that I would put forward as a request.